どうぞ。
In the developing world, child labor exists as a gray zone problem. We could not legal in the status quo. We could not legalize this. We could not say it is okay to do, but we could never say we could never diminish these kinds of things. We could never destroy the circumstances of the child labor happening. Some people in the developed world said that it is a bad thing for a child to work, and it is a bad thing for getting child labor, so we should ban it. But we say this is not looking at the reality, and these beautiful words are not suitable things to say. And we want to say, we believe that if we think about the child, if we think about the children who is actually doing the labor in these developing world themselves, we should better allow it, and we should give them a right for them to work and for them to do the labor in the developing nations company. So we like to give today's our model. So in our model, all the country in the developing world is going to take this, and they have to, we allow child labor, and they will have to employ this child as giving the same treatment as adult employees. So, but there's an exception in the terms of the wage, and the minimum wage will be the 50% of the average adult worker. So this is today's our model, and by setting our model, we have three benefits. The first is about later, please. Why we could maximize the choice of the children, the choice to work or not, later, please. Second is about how this is which situation is beneficial for the children in the developing nation itself, not admitting to child labor or admitting to child labor. And the third argument will be brought by my partner, but it is about the development of the nation itself. Yes, sir.
Do you agree that child labor is bad then?
No, we believe that the child labor is actually not bad thing. What is bad is that people who is actually abusing the child in the terms of the word child labor. But in this model, people are going to destroy these people who abuses the children because they are children, and they will have to treat them as the same worker. So after proposal, the child labor is not a bad thing to do. Sit down. So moving on to the first point, why we can maximize the choice of the child. Well, so in this current situation, why the people say the child labor is bad is because they see the child could not give a certain decision, and the child have no right to decide themselves doing the work is suitable or not, or something like that. But we believe this reason is not enough. Just being a child is not a reason that we could deny this child's own will. If the child says that they want to sit down, they want to work for their family or to earn money for them for their education or something, it is okay for us to admit it. This is so we say it's in. So yes, no, sit down. If the company themselves denies these children in a point of actually employing him or not, like it is okay for the company to deny because the company is the one who will decide if this children is suitable or not. But it is not the law. It is not the law to decide that it is only because the children they are not suitable or so. So what we are saying in this point is that we should actually just give a choice for them, give a chance for them to apply for the employee to certain companies. Sit down. So as for this reason, we say the children have a right to work, and we should maximize this right. Moving on to the second point about the actual situation of the children in the developing nation. So if there is no labor for these children, what would happen? These children are actually sustaining their own life by working for themselves. This is because their parents' earning is not enough to sustain their family or sustain themselves living. So if they could not labor, then what will happen? There will be a deprivement in the terms of the wage. So sit down. So as of the income of that household. So what would happen is that they could never buy something to eat or something to wear or something. And as a result, it will be a so severe life for them to spend in these nations. So, and plus, even if they do not labor, they have a less chance to earn the education in the developing nations. As for this, even if they are deprived the chance of the labor, there's nothing for themselves to do for the future or anything. So if they are said no to the labor, the children would have nothing to do for them to benefit their own life. So this is a very crucial situation. On the other hand, if the labor is allowed, they could actually go to the company and could work. And since we are going to employ this with the same condition with the adults, it is safe for them because if they were abused, they could sue that company and they could win because it's suitable. by its model. So in the short term, their labor situation is going to improve, and this is the first benefit. And the second benefit is in the long term, because they're working from the early stages. If they have a chance that they could work until they will grow up, and they could still working after they will grow up in the developing nation. As for this reason, we say in the long term it is beneficial for the children too, because they could earn more money. So as for this reason, we say our model should stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Economic development is the only way to get out of poverty, and we see that not only children are suffering from hunger, also adults are suffering from hunger, and we believe that by taking this proposal, this will actually hinder economic development, leading those adults and children not being able to have a job, and we believe that we shouldn't take this proposal. So firstly, let me refute back to the previous speaker's point. First of all, I cannot agree with their condition that they have made to the minimum wage for like 50% of adults. So we believe that even for those children, they should be paid what they deserve. We don't think they can discriminate only children just because they didn't give any reason why we can discriminate Lisicans for those cases. Well, I'd like to extract new point from this realization. Well, if we allow this proposal, the companies are going to employ only children. Children are engaging in cotton industry or iron processing industry or many industries. So by taking their proposals, because companies only have to pay half minimum wage for those adults, they are going to employ only children. So as a consequence, adults are going to lose their job, Mr. Speaker. So we say that by taking their proposals, it is adults who are going to lose their job. What is the justification to prioritize children's lives over those adults' lives? We believe that they should be given equal rights to equal lives. So this is our reputation. Okay.
But sir, wouldn't you say that these children, if they're not put to work, will end up working in worse situations as like prostitutes and garbage workers?
Okay, about the legal market, we believe that police and those kind of things are trying to solve tackle those kind of problems, and even taking their proposals, I don't think those illegal slave guests would change either, because the demand still exists, and there are those gangs who are trying to move on to traffic those children, and we don't think this is going to change by taking their proposal. So I want you to explain that in your point. So what I've told you is we cannot prioritize. We don't hear that why we can prioritize children's lives over adult lives. So now let me explain our point. That is about economic development would be hindered by taking their proposal. So we believe that balance of power between employer and employee is very important, because once this balance collapses, those employees would be exploited by those employers, right? So we say under the status quo, this is being achieved relatively better than taking after plan, because though there are child labor actually existing in the developing nations, we believe the police and other officials are trying to prosecute and trying to crack down and tackle these kind of problems. And so we say in status quo, adults are actually being employed, and we say adults have more knowledge, and they know, and we say they know they understand their rights as an employee. They know the labor value of those in order to get like paid equally for what they deserve and move on to collective bargaining in order to get the rights of the as a labor. So we say when those employees, adult employees, are not being paid enough, or so they move on to negotiation. They move on to collective bargaining disputes to those with those employers. So please sit down. So through that process, they can increase their wages, or they can get the proper money that they are deserved to gain, right? So they can use this money not only to daily necessities, but also they can use that buy other goods. So we say consuming culture would be formed by taking this proposal. So in other words, we can create a demand, so we can create it. So when there's a demand, we can put supply. So there will be economic circulation, but taking this proposal, because children are going to go into those industry, they don't have knowledge, or they don't have ability to move on to collective bargaining. So we believe that they won't be able to have enough money. So there will be no consuming culture, no circulation of the economy. We don't think this is going to solve the problem at all. Moreover, thank you.
Thank you for calling. Madam Speaker, what the government wants to do today is possible to welcome the children into the legal market and secure the safer working environment. And the second reason is to provide legitimacy to hire children with each single company. And by giving this kind of legitimacy, we can secure the much safety as for the working environment of the children. Since they do not agree that a school is quite a severe situation, we are very proud to propose this model. First of all, I repeat what my previous speaker mentioned. They told you about how this model encourages the children and family to use the money and waste the money. However, please, ladies and gentlemen, what is the proper usage of money? Simply because today's target is under the severe situation, poverty and starvation. So that is why once they got money, they can actually properly use such kind of money for example, daily commodity or such kind of things to sustain their own life with their family. That's why their argument totally doesn't stand. And having reviewed that, let's move on to the reconstruction before the yes.
Would you agree with the child labor in developed nations if their condition is severe?
What we are saying is that, first of all, child labor itself should be justified in developing country, and moreover, simply because the situation is quite severe, in some cases, we have to legalize such kind of option, even though we cannot deny the potential harm by working as a labor force in developing country. So, and moreover, this case is also applicable in this situation. That is why the legislation does not stand. And before moving to our third argument, let's reconstruct what my previous speaker mentioned. And today's leader of the opposition told you the minimum wage for the children is too small. However, we do not think it is not significant because the reason why we set this minimum wage as for the 50% is because to give uniqueness as a labor force of children. Simply because the children is higher because the cheaper labor force. Actually, we can secure the workability. You know, many companies have much incentive to hire these children. So this means we can secure the much environment because, as my father told you before, because of this legality, company first of all has to secure the company's welfare, and we have to secure the minimum wages. So because of this uniqueness, we can improve the situation occurring in the Sarah schools. And therefore, the possibility that the children's occupation by the rule for occupation of adult that also does not stand, because we can already secure the separation of working uniqueness. Maybe we assume children will be hired as the manual labor. It's quite simple working. On the other hand, adult is still higher in another job. That is why their argument also doesn't stand. And sorry, please. And finally, let me introduce our third argument, which is about how this within third argument, I will explain how this model enable these countries develop more and more. We have two scenarios. First is about the increased productivity. This is because first of all, children is quite unique as a cheaper labor force compared to the adult. So if companies think it as a necessity, many companies try to hire these children as cheaper labor force. For example, they try to introduce these people into the manual production line or so forth. So that is why, simply because we can set aside the labor cost in proportion to this, we can secure the much increase of production productivity. This is first scenario. Please. And as for the second scenario, we say outsourcing will increase. This is simply because all developing countries will legalize the child labor itself. So even though in the current situation, some company hesitate to hire children because it is quite gray zone even in the developing country. However, simply because today's all country try to legalize this child labor itself, each single company will get the legality to hire these children as their own worker. So what will happen? Simply because many companies try to outsourcing their own body into such kind of developing country, the whole economy in the developing country also will be boosted. So that is why for these two reasons, for the productivity and the outsourcing, we can secure the much economical boost in the developing country. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Now I welcome the leader of the opposition today for his introduction within 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a government, they shouldn't impose the value that children should be exploited as labor forces, but government should focus on much more to the education, because that is the only way to get out of the poverty situation for the developing countries. And we shouldn't allow the government to send a message that child should be is legalized to be exploited as a cheap labor forces. That is why we oppose. Firstly, the Deputy Prime Minister said on the third argument that productivity will increase, but it is untrue because
the most of the companies which are operating in the developing country, it's not the developing company, but the multinational company which are exploiting the exploiting the children in the domestic in the developing countries, but they actually bring the economical benefit back to the country of the origin or the developed companies. So that what they are doing is they are just exploiting the cheap labor forces in the developing countries, and it does not contribute to the developing countries' economical benefit. So that what we need is a unique. What is necessary for the development of the developing company is we have to focus on much more to the education, because by doing the education, children can get the skill, and from the long-term perspective, they can become the manpower in the developing countries. That is why the argument doesn't stand. No, thank you. And also, he has mentioned that companies' right to hire the children. But we say we shouldn't allow in every case we shouldn't allow in every case that the company's right to hire children should be prioritized. Because by taking this plan, it is a high possibility that companies will try to exploit the children, which will be explained by my partner. And children's health or working conditions should be damaged. That we have to prioritize children more to the company's selfish activity that the argument does not stand. What my partner told you as an first argument was that when we are in the market, the employer and employee should be having an equal right in terms of negotiation and so forth. And children do not have enough ability to negotiate because children are obedient and physically weak, so that it is very difficult for the children to insist their opinion to the employer that it is hindering the principle of the free market system. That is why children shouldn't be allowed as a labor. Yes, obviously.
Even though some company might exploit some children with neglecting the governmental authority, why can you say the status quo is rather better?
I will explain my point. So that my second point is children will be severely exploited and deprived of the educational opportunity. And under status quo, some children are engaging in the child labor, but being cracking down on by the government or the ILO severely. Not all the companies do not use the children as a labor force because they fear of the severe punishment by the government. Once it was revealed that the company are using the child as a labor, their reputation would severely go down. So that child is not so exploited by the company, such as Nike's cases. Nike stopped using the child as a labor force because their reputation severely goes down once it was revealed that they are using the child as a labor force. But no, thank you. But after plan, what will happen? That many companies will try to employ children as a labor forces, and because they can reduce the labor cost, and because children are obedient, and so that employer can easy to control their children. It will take the job away from the adults, and it is adults who should be engaged in the job, but not. By taking this plan, children will take the job, which should be focused on the education, but adults will lose the job. That is a severe situation. And it is very hard to draw the line between the legal working conditions, illegal working conditions. But under the status quo, because every case is, even if students are working for 30 minutes or 1 hour, it is very easy to detect. It is very easy to be cracked down on. But after plan, it will be very difficult to distinguish between the legal framework, legal market and illegal market. That is why police and government will be very hard to crack down on business. That is why children will be more exploited and deprived of their future. That is why we make it of course.
leader of the opposition, and as well as a member of the government today by the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and all ladies and gentlemen of the House. If you look at history, especially the Western countries, how did they develop? Well, in the Industrial Revolution, though there were many workers, including young labor force, who were supporting the whole industry of the country, and we say this was the one main factor to put forward the development of the Western country, and now we can see one of the most wealthiest countries in the world. And we believe that what we need to focus on how we can develop the whole economy in the developing nations. Because by improving the whole wealth, we believe that it will at last trickle down to the whole people's life. And this is we believe that most important in the developing nation. So as a closing a member of government, first let me repeat what the previous speaker said. The previous speaker talked about how children will be exploited by the companies, but we say this will not happen simply because children can now acquire legal status from the government, which means that it will be easier to accuse a certain company when they may be abused or just treated illegally. For example, like giving wages which is under the minimum wage, or just making those children overuse. No, thank you. And even if it is hard for a child, well, of course there are always parents or other old people who can consult with the children and give help for those children. So we don't think that there is a problem for the child to exert their own right. And we can say this will be a very big damage for the company because, well, of course, those companies will be known that the company is just abusing a child, and it will lead to the very deterioration of reputation, and of course the company will be imposed a punishment. So we don't think there is a problem which is about exploitation of a child. No thank you. So next, let me move on to our extension. This is about how this proposal can lead to the development of the economy in the developing nation, and how we can improve the whole wealth of the people. We say that for the nation, especially where the industry is not still fully developed, what we need to think is about how we can develop the whole industry. And in case of developing nation, it is the manufacturing industry. No, thank you. And please think about what happened in the Industrial Revolution. So actually, there were many workers working for a certain company, and even though those workers may seem to be working for a very little wage, what happened is that because the company provided many products, at the end of the day, those benefits will trickle down to those workers, because it is those workers who are no thank you, creating those products. Now what we can see when we take this proposal is that how those developing nations will be very attractive place for those advanced nations to go on and to build a company and hire those people in the developing nation. Well, no thank you. This is simply because we can say for the advanced nation, so of course they have the incentive to build a factory in the developing nation to maximize the profit by using this cheap labor. And because by increasing this labor, the market was a full labor force. By including those children, we can expect more advanced nation companies coming to developing world to work. And we say this can lead to the development of the economy because first of all, when we can expect more advanced nation companies coming to the developing world, this simply means that no thank you, the benefit will be given to the developing nation. people. Both this opposition side said, well, like those companies will just exploit the workers. So no, thank you. That's harmful. But no, thank you. But we can simply see that at the end of the day, it is those companies who are paying the payment for those workers in the developing nation, which means that when there will be more company coming in, there will be more people, more people who can give away more amount of money flowing into the developing nation. And this is why we can say this will lead to the whole development of the economy. Because simply more money coming into the country, which means that more money will be used in the domestic market, in the developing nation. So when we can see more money going into workers and also used in the domestic market, we can expect that people will have more chance to earn money, which is coming from a advanced nation. This is why we believe that the best way to solve the poverty or to help the developing nation is to increase the wealth of the whole people. And this is why we are proud to propose. Thank you.
I thank the member of the government. Now I will call on the member of the opposition to deliver his constructive speech within 5 minutes.
The opening house focused mainly on corporations and development. But what we need to take a look at, ladies and gentlemen, is the most vulnerable actors in today's debate, the children. And that's going to be the basis of closing off this extension. Because we would question whether or not this choice to work for children is a valid thing in itself. And we think that, one, the choice of children to work is invalid. Two, even if it was, we think that this policy poses tremendous harm to the children, especially in terms of their health and undermining the future prospects of the children themselves. And that's the two extensions that I'm going to give you today. But before I move on, let me refute the member of government. Now, he talked about how developing nations would be more attractive if we take this policy. But we don't think things would change even if we take this policy. Why? Because developing nations in nature already are attractive because A, they have the natural resources to get money. That's why trading companies set up construction facilities to drill oil. We think that happens regardless of this policy. No thank you. Number two, we think that outsourcing is already happening under the status quo because the wages of India is relatively cheaper than the wages of the United States. That's why Dell is setting up telephone centers in Mumbai, and we think that happens already in the status quo. We don't think that attractiveness doesn't change even if we take this policy. Now let me move on to my first extension about why we think that the right to work isn't necessarily a valid choice, which clashes with opening government. Now why do we think that the choice to work for children is something that's invalid? We have two reasons. Number one, we think that children inherently are incapable of thinking about long-term and short-term prospects. And that's why we think that children would rather take the money instead of working for education. Because we think that children don't realize that education increases the lifetime prospects of themselves. And because they don't understand that, we think that governments need to tell children that they should rather work. So on the first level, we think that children can't think rationally. Number two, if we take a look at the relationship between children and adults, we think that more often than not, adults parents are the ones that force children to work. Why? Because parents have a higher position inside the family, and we think that it's far more easier to justify parents' actions to force these children to work. So what you have now, ladies and gentlemen, is that children involuntarily working because of this policy, because now it's legalized, and now parents can have more say and to make children work. So that's why we think that because children aren't rational, and because we think that parents can force children to work, we think that the choice to work for children is invalid. But two, even if this choice was valid, we think that this poses serious consequences on the children themselves, and that's going to be my second extension about why we think that this hurts the children's health and future. Yes?
Well, if you said that the parent is going to force the children to work, that means that these households are in a lack of the money and resources. So it's better for there is more money.
Okay, dude, okay, you have government facilities, NGOs, NPOs. We think that can take care of what you said. What we're talking about is the choice of children. Now let me move on to my second extension. Now, how does this policy undermine the health conditions of the parents? It's simple, because we think that taking this policy is going to allow corporations to force the child to work in dangerous and unsanitary conditions. We think that their paradigm allows children to work in mines, or taking oil, or working in cotton factories 24/7. We think that results in things such as lung cancer, back problems, these infectious diseases like cholera and flu. We think this is more likely to occur, which hurts the child's health. Number two, we think that this in the long term, children are going to be unable to work because what they acquired in their 20 years is simple labor, such as peeling oranges or picking up coal. We don't think that leads to getting better jobs, better working conditions. So that's why we think in the long term, because if you allow children to conduct simple labor, chances are they cannot go up the social ladder. Number three, we think that this policy undermines for the children to receive access to education because you deprive their time to learn. Instead, they have to work. What does this mean? Children aren't going to be able to read, write, think, math. If we take their policy, we think that you're not going to get any skill. But compare that to the status quo where children at least have some sort of access to education. We think that brings better lifetime prospects for the children themselves. So what have I told you? I've told you that this choice that Opening Gulf gave is invalid, and even if it was, it hurts the children. That's why we oppose. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, even in my slightly drunken haze, I can tell a bad argument when I hear one. So basically, Madam Speaker, what I'm going to do to you today is basically outline, what has been said and basically say who's closer to reality. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to see that we on the government benches have a much more nuanced view of the world, and it's not, just save the children. So, but before I do that, let's just quickly refute the extensions that were brought forward by the opposition member. So basically, the first thing he said is that children can't think fully rationally, and we think the choice that they make is invalid. First of all, Madam Speaker, remember we're talking about developing countries. You can't have everything. It's not just a choice between going to school or going to work. It's about doing nothing because there is no school, you can't afford school, or dying. We say and ended up getting exploited. We don't think that choice is valid. And we think, moreover, as my partner said, if more children are working, hopefully that means maybe their younger brother, the family will have enough money saved up so that younger brother can go to school and lift up the country and work nicely. We cannot promise on the government side that all children will have instant access to education and that work is the easiest and greatest thing in the world, but we think not working is actually worse, and ultimately we don't get the positive effects that they want unless you implement a plan such as the one the government has presented. So So the second point that they brought up was that about, harms to children. This means we can put children in mines and, whip them and work them 24 hours. First of all, we think labor laws exist for adults as well as children. And as the opening, said, as our opening slide already sort of said, international companies don't like bad press. That's why Nike shut down, severed those ties with those contractors that were beating children. So ultimately, we think in a plan that at least we allow children to legally work, there's a greater chance that things will be regulated. And they haven't shown at all why all child labor will be of the worst possible kind, right? They've never established that. And unless they can show that, that it will be all cases, we don't think that extension stands either. So let's look. So where are we looking at this case? Where does this case boil down to? Ultimately, it boils down to short-term versus long-term for children and for what that means for the country. So in terms of the short term, Madam Speaker, we've already painted the very realistic picture in the developing world. There isn't tons of resources the government has to build schools, ones I'll take in a second, and feed everybody, everyone has a job. We think in that case, we think, what are the resources the country has? It's children, Not all countries, developing nations do not by definition have natural resources like oil to be exploited, like Ito-kun somehow thinks so. And we think for certain countries, in order to undercut India, you want to have child labor. Do you disagree?
Yeah. But this motion will take away the jobs from the adults. So the adult house.
Okay, I get your point. Okay, we don't think so. Because first of all, we do agree to a certain extent children can't do jobs certain adults can do because, they are at a different developmental stage. However, there are certain jobs children are uniquely able to do that adults can do. And we don't think necessarily that, we think a lot of these companies just want cheap labor. And what do these countries have? Lots of people, including children. And there are a lot of children. So in a lot of developing countries, if you just say only the adults can work, there's a huge portion of the population that isn't able to work and can't do anything else because they can't all go to school because the country can't fund a school infrastructure. So we're getting into our long-term benefits now. But basically, Madam Speaker, we're saying in order for those, in order to be able to have a country where eventually, children don't need to work, not everyone needs to work, you only need to become an adult to truly work and provide for your family, you do need this labor advantage that you get by having child labor. That's how thanks to industrialization, we are able to simplify jobs so children can do them. And that's how, we grew. How countries grew out of the Industrial Revolution. And we think it's, highly hypocritical for us to, impose these first world values that were developed on these ideas of child labor. So we don't think long term, we don't think, these countries would benefit from having child labor, but in the here and now, where people are starving, and it's work or be exploited work, we think this plan of allowing children to work in a legal framework is much more beneficial for the children and the country as a whole. So for those reasons, and the reasons that we stated about developing countries, we proudly oppose.
Now I call for the person to deliver a brief speech within 5 minutes.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I will stay in the side of the video camera in case you're recording. Then I will have the very simple 3 criteria to conclude this round. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, let me prove to you using the analysis of the both sides, or for the teams, that whether working condition of the children will be better or not. We simply say no, it will be bad. Second, I will talk about even if there's no abuse by the factory owner or whatever, there are reasons why we say children should not be stay away from working. 3, about why status quo should be promoted, as Yogun hopefully has explained. About the first criteria, ladies and gentlemen. Well, they say with 2 reasons that their children's working condition will be better. 1, because it's legal. Well, I have a very strong doubt for that. Well, if you look at the reality that they are talking about, if you look at the reality of the developing countries, there's adult working condition is not yet protected if you look at the reality of the developing countries. So being the legal status doesn't mean anything, ladies and gentlemen. For example, the adult working condition is like that. That they are forced to work like overtime, more than they have a contract, or they have to work in the very severe environment, like a cotton factory. And most of the case, they get injured or they get disease. In that conditions, developing countries are even failing to control the status of the adult environment. How can they promote better environment for working environment for children? Second, about the long-term development, their working condition should be justified, as Shiro-san said. Well, it sounds nice, but for us, what they're basically talking about is we need some sacrifice for the country's development. And we don't think so. See, 1, on the sacrifice point, we don't think that anyone should be sacrificed for any reason because they also deserve the human right as long as they're not injured. Second, they talked about the Industrial Revolution in 19th century. It's very funny to the Todai student has talked about this. Yes, it happened, but it doesn't mean that the action itself doesn't justify their actions. And also, the consequences are, their analysis was like this. Because there was child labor existed there, that's why the Industrial Revolution succeeded. Nobody would think so, because their industry was very first, like car industry. That's the particular reason why they got the Industrial Revolution, not the reason why they have more people working there, including the children. And so very simply, their analysis about the working condition is false. Second, about the children's right, ladies and gentlemen. And my partner has talked about choice of the children should be invalid in some extent. As you look at the reality, in the developed nation, for example, we don't give the full right, equal amount of right as adults to children, simply because they're not rational enough, like that. So even in developed world, we don't guarantee the full right for the children. Why does that have to be applied to developing nation? We don't see any reason for that. And secondly, about because children are very incapable, as OG has a little bit analysis on that, they are easily to abuse, maybe even not by a factory, by the parents, ladies and gentlemen. They can just have a baby, and if they grow up like 10 years old, they can use them as a labor for the family itself, and we don't think that's very just. And their strongest analysis is because they lack money. But we don't think the financial status itself doesn't justify any consequences or any action for them. So we're very proud to disagree with their point. Maybe later. Yes, please.
Sir, okay, but then what do these children do? Because they can't all go to school and they end up not contributing at all to the economy. How does the country get better?
That's my tip right here. Why we have to keep the status quo. Well, if you look at the reality in developing nations, ladies and gentlemen, there are some NGOs or INRI or some programs are promoting school. But we are not fools to just say that. Ladies and gentlemen, we like to analyze, like Inoku has to do, why the NGO are failing to build the education system in developing nations. If you look at the A district, for example, because they are maybe near the factory, close to the factory, there are lots of children working legally or illegally, we don't care. That's why even if there are teachers, very nice teachers, and there is a school, but there is no children are going there. That's why they pull out from the developing nation, and that we call failed. But if there is a B district with no child labor, there's a full of children, like they say, they have nothing to do but going to school, and usually that school provides lunch or something, so they go there and they get education. But the consequence is very simple. They get education for development for the nation. So what we're focusing on is pretty simple. Human rights should not be sacrificed at any reason. That's why I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.